Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Career Expert Roundtable. I am Bill, the company's expert, and with me, as always, is Abby from LifeWorks Balance. And this is the live stream that we do once every 2 weeks, where we answer your questions on job search and careers and anything related. Where this is going out live on my channel and on Abby's channel, and on Abby's. You got a Twitch thing going too, right?
Got a Twitch channel as well. Yes. So trying to
Yeah.
diversify my streams. But if you are watching this live with us, please get in the chat, put any questions you've got, just like Bill said, about your job search, about interviewing, about your career in general. We are here to answer any questions you've got about those big areas because there's plenty
Absolutely.
of content out there.
Yeah, and wherever you're watching this from, we can see your comments. And I think the way it works is, I think everyone can see your comments too. I think that's how that works. I'm not sure. Anyway, we can see your comments. That's what's important. So get in the chat. Let us know what you're wondering about. We were just wanting to start this off by talking about this time of year and how job search is affected. In November and in December, a lot of people are starting to wind down their job search right around this time of year. I'm not sure why. I don't know what the reason for that.
I think it has to do with just our mindset around the holidays and like the seasonal slowdown. A lot of people will ramp down their application process during this time of year, November and December. They probably think it has a lot to do with, the holidays, people being out of the office, assuming that there's not going to be that many job postings available. But in reality, this is the best time to be applying to jobs because if you think about it, organizations are starting to prep their budgets for the next fiscal year, which a lot of budgets will start in January of the 1st or the 1st of January of the next year. They're trying to figure out what their headcount's going to look like. They're trying to do all of those logistical things. And if you think about how long the hiring process takes, let's just say that it takes a month. We all know it actually takes a little bit longer than a month, but probably closer to 2 months. But anyway, let's say it takes a month. They would probably rather have someone who starts January 1st-ish than start the hiring process on January 1st and wait until February or even March to bring someone on. So now is the perfect time to be applying. So if you've got questions about your application, about your resume, about interviewing, about any of that, put them in the chat. We'd be happy to talk more about it. Bill, when you were working as a CEO, did you notice if there were any trends with your organizations that would change based off of time of year when it came to hiring?
I can't, in all honesty, I can't remember if there were seasonal trends. I mean, what you're saying is true. It's like the other thing is that people retire, like usually at the end of the year. They don't retire in September, or October. They'll retire at the end of December, So it's a logical time that like, as you said, as the companies are looking, because if you have a new employee starting the first week of January, that's consistent. The old employee has just left, and then you get the new one starting. So, I know that's a factor. I know that the whole like retirement thing, also it tends to be at the end of the year. People put in years of service and stuff like this. There's a lot of things that end like with the calendar year. So some things end with the fiscal year, some things end with the calendar year. And I know some HR type stuff ends with the calendar year. So, it's a logical time that you, like, as you said, I'm just basically repeating what you said, that companies would be looking now. Right. And my understanding, you can tell me, Abby, if this kind of jives with what you've seen, but my understanding was that you had some drop off in hiring in December, but it wasn't proportional with the amount of applications. So like applications would go from this down to this in December, but hiring would go from this to that or something like this. So that's why it was a good time of year to look, to be looking, doing your job search.
Absolutely. And let's just say that a typical job gets 300 applicants, but towards the end of the year in November, it gets 100 applicants. If you're applying to that job when it has 300 applicants, you have a very slim chance of getting your application seen. But if you apply when it has been reduced to just 100 applicants, you've almost tripled your chance at being seen.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a huge benefit to continuing your job search during this time. even when you're feeling like you're wanting to slow down because of holidays and maybe feeling defeated because you're not getting responses and things like that. But it increases your chances substantially if you can keep your job application and job search up during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said earlier, that's logical to me, because I asked the question, like, why are people winding down their job search? And you're saying, like, well, it's the end of the year, things are slowing down, things are shutting down. It's like, yeah, companies are slowing down for the holidays.
Mhm.
Uh, and people are thinking about vacation and stuff like this, or holiday celebrations. So they might be slowing down their work stuff, but when you think about it, it's like job search exists outside of that. You're not doing it as part of your work activity. You're between jobs or whatever, and it's independent, right? So, um, people associate the two things together. Oh, work stuff slows down, therefore I should slow down my job search. It's
Yep.
like, no, no, that's actually false.
Yeah, when I remember when I first got into recruiting, I was expecting things to slow down because my experience as a candidate was expecting things to slow down and not apply as much. But when I was a recruiter, that was actually one of our busiest seasons because we were preparing for the upcoming year. And the beginning of the calendar year, we, had new positions that were in play because we had different sources of funding that might come into play starting January 1st. So it was really fascinating to have my own paradigm shift from
Mhm.
expecting it to be slow to actually this is probably the heaviest recruiting season that we've got, and it didn't slow down from there.
Yeah, it's like it's the opposite. It's inversely proportional to everything else.
Yeah.
Um, I see we've got some questions here. So this is I guess I can put these up on the screen here.
Yeah.
Erica Musin, is that? Hi
Great.
Abby, hi Bill. I watched your video on what you would do today to get hired. I got some great tips from that video. However, you mentioned that you would start with the CEO. What if you are someone not working at or close to that executive leadership level? Well, most people are not working. Okay. So what this was, I believe, was this was to do with networking, and I was saying that if you're going to contact a company, what I advocate for is the goal should be, instead of starting at the bottom and then going up to find whatever hiring manager or whatever department where you could work and get a job in. Instead of going from the bottom up, I would start at the top and go down. Now, obviously, there's some caveats to this, but as a general rule, assuming it's not some superstar CEO, it's not like a massive company, global company. If there's like 1,000 employees or less, I would start with the CEO. I would contact the CEO and then go down from that. Now, it's
Yeah.
not that you're working at that level, but you should be able to send a professional, uh, appropriate message. And they're not going to give you a ton of their time, but they're going to direct you down to the person. That's the idea. So you don't have to be like at the executive level to do this. You could be at the professional level. You could be anywhere really, as long as you're capable of sending a professional message. That's appropriate. You understand kind of the protocol behind that.
Absolutely. And Bill and I even talked about this at the very beginning. We were like, we probably are not going to talk about networking and things like that. But this is
Mm.
essentially what that is part of building your network and contacting the people who are decision makers versus the people who are connectors. Both are very important when it comes to networking. But if you want to, I guess, jumpstart and launch into your job search, you'll probably get a better outcome if you're going to contact a decision maker versus a connector. So,
Yes.
an individual contributor, someone who's doing the type of work that you might want to do, or someone who's even in a managerial job, but maybe lower down in the hierarchy, they might not have the decision making power that a CEO or director level person might. So you want to reach out to someone who does have the decision making power, who then can make some connections for you from there. But if I'm going to reach out to just someone who is an individual contributor like me, who's doing the same type of work that I want to do, all they can probably do is say, "Yeah, let me just send your HR resume to our HR rep, and they might be able to help you." Whereas if the CEO says, "I'm going to send your resume to the HR rep and tell them that we want to interview you," the HR rep is definitely going to make some movement from what the CEO says versus what a boots on the ground employee might say.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, like, there's as always with these things, there's several principles involved, and it's going to vary depending on the situation. But I mean, one thing is that the people that can help you, they're going to be above your level. Um, a CEO, generally speaking, has the power to hire you on the spot. Like, are you necessarily shooting for that? No, but that's the advantage of talking to these people. So I said that to say this: rather than shy away from the people that like can actually really help you, and say no, it's not appropriate for me to talk to somebody up there. I need to talk to somebody at my level who may be powerless. They don't have the power to just hire someone on a whim, or make a decision. You're going to be going to people above your level, one level above, two, three levels above. uh, that's just the nature of the game. It's the nature of networking. You go to the people that have the power to help you, rather than saying, I have to stay in my lane, I have to mind my place, and I'm going to go to the speak to the most junior employee in the company. You know what I mean? Like, that's not necessarily the way to do it. It's certainly something I would discourage people in doing.
And you can do it. It just will probably take you a lot longer to achieve the results that you're hoping to achieve if you start at that lower level of someone who might not have that type of decision making or hiring authority that a CEO or director level person might.
Yeah, exactly. um, and like the other thing is that Abby and I were talking briefly before we went live, and we were talking about this idea that you know there are some people out there that we all start somewhere, and some people have never been introduced to networking. They don't understand the idea behind it. They're kind of hearing about it, but they're very skeptical of it, and I can certainly understand that. Um, there's some people that equate it, like we were talking about earlier, with nepotism and all kinds of bad things. It's like, that's, it certainly can be that, but it often really, really isn't. It's just people talking to each other. And, you know what I'm saying? So the idea is that if you can learn how to reach out to people and what's appropriate to say and what's professional, you're not trying to pester these people. You're just saying, look, I'm looking for this. And if you can direct me, they'll respond with a one line thing and say, okay, I forwarded that to this person at the head of the department. You should talk to them, you know, that kind of thing. Executives are always looking for the next, like enthusiastic would be employees. That's the thing. If someone has got some real talent, and someone's got some real passion, they're always looking for that. They may not deal with you personally, but they're going to direct you to someone who can deal with you. And it sometimes it's very powerful. Like Abby said, you coming in and being referred by the CEO. You know what I mean? I had a student that took one of my courses in university where I was talking about networking, and I made all the students go and do stuff. And I made the students like interview CEOs and things. And in this particular case, the student had the CEO hand their resume to the director of HR right in front of her and say, look into this person. I mean, that's very powerful. The director of HR is not going to, treat it like priority 235, and they're not going to just, I'll get to it when I get to it. They're going to pay attention. So that's the advantage of doing this stuff.
Yep.
Anyway.
And Bill has a whole course on networking, which also was part of our conversation before we went live. Like, we could talk for hours on the topic of networking and how to go about this in the most effective way for you. If you really want to jumpstart that, check out Bill's course. If you're watching this from my channel, I've linked to his channel in the description box. So you can click that, and then you can access his course content that way.
Yes, and also on that same note, I'm not a career coach, so I don't work with people one on one, but Abby does. And if you're looking for someone that's going to work with you and help you to just navigate the whole map of job search, like how to send in applications that get interviews, you get callbacks, and then how to do interviews where you get offers, things like this. She can help you with that. It's great to have someone in your court, someone on your side. A common complaint that I hear on my YouTube channel among job seekers is people go to job interviews and they complain like, I'm told no, but I'm not given any feedback. I don't understand what I did wrong. I don't understand what I need to work on. And that's usually what people encounter, because the recruiter doesn't work for you. They work for the company. The company signs their checks. So their loyalty is to the employer, not to you. It's nice to have someone on your side that works for you, that is your advisor, your backup, that can work with you and give you that kind of feedback and help you work on yourself, that'll get results. So check
That,
out Abby's channel. She provides those services, career coaching. Um, I think you have a list of different things on there, right? So just,
yep. Yep.
yeah.
And I actually just worked with a client this morning who found me through your channel, Bill, through
Oh, right
our
on.
live streams, which was super great. And this person is moving from more of like an individual contributor role to a director level role. And it was an interview strategy session. We talked about, some of the things that have gone well in their past interviews, things that haven't gone well in their past interviews. We did a couple of practice questions where I helped clarify how to answer these certain questions and how to frame their response. We talked about questions to ask at the end and just general interview strategy. So it can be very helpful.
Yeah. And you do mock interviews with people, like you do pretend job interviews where you're like interviewing them for a job, like you're going through the motions, asking them questions like it would play out in a real job interview. And they're answering them like it's a real job interview.
Yep.
And then at the end, as I understand it, you give them feedback and say, like, well, when you said this, it came across like this. I would recommend you work on this or something.
Yep.
And yeah,
Exactly.
if you're watching this and you're looking for that kind of mentoring and individualized kind of attention to help you improve, that's why people get career coaches. So if you're looking for that, check out Abby's channel. She's got a lot of services she provides of that nature.
All right. We had another question come through. It says, "Hi, Bill. I'm curious about how to answer when asked, how would your colleagues describe you in 3 words, both the good and the bad? For the good, it's easy, but the bad seems kind of tough." Ooh.
Well,
That's
it's
good.
another version of what is your weakness, right? And
Yes.
so everything that you would apply, at least my take on, I mean, Abby can give me her take on this, but my sort of version of it is, you want to basically never say your real weaknesses. Anything that would be real, that would be like a real concern, you want to minimize. You want to really try hard not to surface any of that stuff, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for any kind of tiebreaker, any kind of thing, right? So, when they say the good and the bad, they're like saying you need to give us some bad qualities or whatever in these 3 words. I would pick something that, is maybe like the what is your weakness thing. My version of that is to say a understandable side effect of something that's awesome. You know, most things are trade-offs. They go like this. I can do things really well or I could do them really fast. You know, so I tend to take a little bit of extra time. I'm not the fastest person, but what I do is really, really good, or whatever. So you give something that they can't really eliminate you for. I know that's kind of a non-answer, but
Yeah, one kind of going along those same lines, when you're looking at the job posting, you would want to make sure that whatever you share, that bad, whatever weakness that might be, whatever your colleagues might say about you, isn't something that is a red flag that indicates that you're not a good fit for the position. So in general, these are things that are relatively innocuous. They are not going to, get you disqualified because you're being honest about it. And at the same time, it demonstrates that you have some self-awareness, that you're not perfect, that you have room to grow, that maybe you had some blind spots that you are now becoming aware of, that you're doing something to improve. And so you always want to put a spin on those more negative things with what are you doing to improve, fix, or mitigate them. So, for example, maybe someone would say that you don't spend enough time doing your own research on a question. You might just interrupt someone in the middle of their work. And so maybe you've gotten that feedback before. So you now take the time to look at your resources, look at training manuals, watch some YouTube videos, do something to try to help give yourself some basic information before you reach a brick wall that you cannot cross by yourself, and ask some questions then. So like that was a piece of feedback that was given to me when I was, first started in my career. I would have a question. I would just go interrupt someone with the question rather than spend some time thinking about how to come to a solution on my own. So what did I do to fix that? Well, I started using my resources. I started, watching videos. I started Googling things. I started asking questions that would give me some information to some other questions later on. So there's always something that you probably are doing to improve or better yourself, to close those gaps, to overcome your weaknesses. Focus on those things as long as they are not going to be a major red flag and problem for the hiring team.
Yeah, it's like questions like this. I imagine. You see, they're trying, like the way I look at it is they're trying to give you rope to hang yourself. you know,
Yeah.
they're giving you the opportunity to say, "Oh, I have this major problem. This bad habit or this inability to do something." Uh, and they're watching for those. Like that's kind of what they're fishing for. And so the idea is that you're going to uh, avoid the trap. You're not going to walk into this ambush they've set for you. So they said, like, give me some 3 words about you. Give me some bad things that you do. And what comes out of your mouth is not really bad stuff. You say like, oh, I'm filtered or whatever. It's like, oh, is that a bad thing? It's like, yeah, you don't always be authentic. You're not always authentic, but that's because you're aware of protocol and other people's sensibilities and you're trying to be professional and stuff like that. So sometimes maybe you're not just keeping it real, which would be more satisfying, but so that's how it can be a bad thing. And it's like, you're really not giving them anything that they can eliminate you over. Right. But that's the trap they're laying for you. And they're just hoping you'll walk right in. Um, you know, at least
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
I agree. I think that's a perfect way to put it. And
I just want to say here, Eric says Rasmussen. Okay. When everything's all one word, like the handle, it's hard for me to read that in real
yes.
time here. I don't understand this comment. Thank you for admitting it's still 25. We still have 2025. We still have more than half the year left. We really don't. I mean, if you're talking about the fiscal year, maybe, but you know, let's
Yeah,
let's
even
let's
then, like
really
a
get into
fiscal year.
this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I also wonder if it's, sometimes mentally, I'm like, gosh, it does feel like we have half the year left and like it's going to be over soon, actually.
Yeah,
It's
it's
coming
sneaking
a lot
up on
faster
you.
than any of us are ready for.
I find the older you get, every year has like 9 months in it, and
Uh,
it's getting less, as you go.
yes.
When I say when I say I did something lately, and I'm referring to like 10 years ago, it's like that's kind of what I'm finding the effect.
I mean,
I
it's
don't know
still
what this
April.
means.
I don't know
Moo.
what that means either.
Yeah, it's fun to imagine. Um, I mean, it's still April. Okay, okay.
I think, Guy, you probably need to get your calendar updated.
This could be some huge philosophical discussion that we could
It
really
could
unwrap the layers on.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Okay. We've reached the end of the chat, people. So I see there's 23 people here. What are you wondering? What are you struggling with? Let us know, and we will do our best to help you. The great thing about Abby and I is that, we come from different sort of backgrounds, different roles. So we have different perspectives on some of the stuff. So you can get multiple perspectives. Um, or else we're going to start plugging courses again and coaching services. So get in the chat. Let us know what's up with you guys, what you're struggling with.
I think, oh, we did have one. Yeah, go ahead. What's the best way to use certifications? Well, I think when it comes to certifications, you want to make sure that they matter to the job that you're applying to.
Yeah.
So the best way to use them on your resume, make sure that they're relevant to the job that you're applying to. If I'm applying to an HR related job that has nothing to do with IT, computer programming, Amazon Web Services, then I don't think I would need to put AWS on my resume. The other thing is that you want to make sure that they're not only relevant but current. So if I got a certification in something 15 years ago, that may no longer be relevant. So make sure they're relevant and current if you're going to keep them on your resume.
Yeah, it's like obviously the thing to go off is, are they asking about it in the job posting? Obviously, if the answer is yes, then you want to make sure that your certifications that they asked about are front and center. Like, yes, I am qualified in that. I do have this in good standing, or whatever. Now, if they don't ask about it, it's probably a good idea to have it on your resume. So, if it's part of like a keyword filter or something, I mean, I don't do that stuff directly. And maybe you could speak more to that, Abby, but I imagine like they might not ask you about a certification directly, but they could still be looking for it, certainly.
Right.
So you'd want it on your resume as a default thing. Um,
Yep.
you know,
And when it comes to things on your resume, which I'm not sure if this is where this person was going with their comment, but I think it's a good segue. When it comes to certifications, those are things that I do believe you should have on your resume. They're like hard skills that you needed to complete a certification process or a training or educational, program for. Definitely think those are things that you should put on your resume. They're quantifiable. The things that I think maybe take up some space, some valuable real estate on your resume that you could just completely leave off would be more of those soft skills or things that are more subjective to you. So, like, for example, if I say that I'm a great communicator, that might be true, but it also might not be true. There's no way to truly measure my ability to communicate based off my resume. So you don't want to have a skills section that includes those very subjective skills like communication, problem solving, things like that. It just takes up valuable real estate. You do want to have a skills or certification section for things that are much more tangible and quantifiable, like an Amazon Web Services certification, a coding thing that you may have gotten, something that's a lot more like training specific.
yeah. And if it's your resume, I'm assuming that you would want to spell that out and then give the acronym. So whatever the filters are looking for, you have it like in multi, because like I have to confess, I didn't know what AWS is. I mean, so you know what I'm saying? Like whatever they're looking for, you have it spelled out. You have it in that format.
And part of the reason for that is not only for the applicant tracking system, like the computer that's looking through your document ahead of time, looking for those keywords and phrases, but you might have someone in HR who doesn't know what AWS is, even though the hiring manager might know that. And so the person in HR might know that it's Amazon Web Services, but not AWS. And they might disqualify you because they don't see Amazon Web Services listed on your resume, even though you've listed the acronym. So you always want to make sure that if there is an acronym listed on your resume, that you spell it out first and then you put the acronym, and then you can use the acronym moving forward.
Yeah, something I get like on a lot of my live streams is I'm talking to people from all over the world and in every industry, and they'll throw like acronyms at me, like I'm supposed to know what that means. I'm sure it's a recognized thing within that industry or within that region or whatever, but it's like outside of that region or outside of that industry, it's not a universally recognized thing. So that's why I was saying earlier about like spelling it out, so people are on the same page as to what this is. Because, I mean, Abby, you can confirm this. Like recruiters, they recruit a lot of times in like from every industry, and so you might not be coming from that world that the candidate is in, so you might not understand what that acronym means. You would need it spelled out so
Yeah.
you understand what this is, and maybe you can even look it up to understand what it is.
Yep. And that's actually just one of the basics of written communication, whether you're writing an email to someone who you assume probably knows what you're talking about. But the first time you ever bring up an acronym, you should be spelling it out word for word just so that the person is clear about what you're speaking about. So there's no miscommunication about what that acronym could or could not mean.
Yes, exactly. Okay, we've got one here from Photo Fuel. No one wants to pay a decent salary. How to overcome? You want to take that one, Abby? It's
You
like
know,
you know,
yeah, this is tough because there's a couple of things that could be going on here. Most organizations are going to try to be competitive when it comes to their pay, because if they're not competitive, they're not going to be able to hire anyone. So it's possible that you might be applying to jobs that are a good fit for you based on a qualifications perspective, but not necessarily your own personal compensation perspective. So that's going to be more of a personal thing that you're going to need to come to terms with, is recognizing where your skill set and the compensation level for that skill set fall and if they're in line. Now, I think that there are also companies who would like to attempt to lowball people first when it comes to salary before offering them as much as they're willing to pay. So they're not going to start by offering you the highest rate that they could pay you. At the same time, it's going to be up to you to be comfortable negotiating. And if you're not willing to negotiate or you come in too strong, then you could sabotage your process. So you don't want to start off too high, but you don't want to accept the lowest offer either. You always do want to negotiate. Um, this person put an additional comment just now that said, I had to accept a low wage. I have experts go over my multiple resumes. Um, I'm, I think that,
there's so many directions you can go with this. Like, for example, in a job interview, they ask like, what are your salary expectations?
mhm,
And in a nutshell, the way I recommend that you approach it, I think everybody's got a different recommendation, slightly different recommendation. I say like, try to avoid the question. So say like, well, it's too soon to tell at this point.
mhm,
The only time you want to really get into that is when you're at the offer stage, when they've actually sent you a written job offer, and now you're going to actually, bang out the details of what you're going to get paid. Um, Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. If you try and say it's too soon, they say, well, no, we need to know. You could try throwing the question back at them. You could say, well, listen, this is an official job posting. Therefore, it's official. Therefore, you guys must have approved everything. Therefore, the compensation must have been approved. So can I ask, what was the official range for this position?
yeah,
And sometimes that'll work. Sometimes they'll say, no, we're recruiting for this job, but we don't know what it pays. So you have to give us a number, and we're not going to tell you anything. Um, I would recommend. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's a red flag to me if they're not willing to give you anything.
Yeah, I mean, it varies. Sometimes you get bad people trying to do this, and sometimes you get good people that are just going through this process. But the third thing that if they really push you and they say you must give us a number, I would recommend that you give a wide range, so
Mhm,
low to high. Now those two numbers, the low number and the high number, they're not ridiculous. They're not like you know not applicable, but they're a stretch. Like it's reasonable, but it's pushing it. And you say like, listen, at this point, somewhere between here and here and there is probably good. That's all I can tell you right now.
yeah.
Um, and that's how you handle it. Now, not to turn this into a lecture or anything, but then you have the whole topic of like market price. You know, the cliched answer for this question is to say know your value. But I mean, what does that actually mean? Uh, for some jobs that are very common, it is possible to look up the market price and figure out what that is. All that means is it's the average amount that companies would pay in your location for that role, right? Doesn't mean that's what you're worth. The jury's out on that. Everybody has their own version of it. But what all it's saying is that on average, this is what companies are paying. Some are paying more, some are paying less, but this is the average amount. Now, on top of that, first of all, there's problems with even being able to find that out in the first place. But let's say hypothetically you can. You go to a website like Glassdoor, like PayScale, and you look it up. You say, I'm in this city and I'm in this role in this industry. What's the market price? Let's pretend they can give it to you and it's actually accurate. Okay. Uh, Now the problem is that some companies intentionally pay below market, which means that they pay less than the market price. What that means is they're okay with maybe having a higher employee turnover. Maybe some of the really top end employees will leave and they won't take that job, but they're okay with that because they're saving money. Other companies, they pay above market, they pay more than the average. Uh, but then there's possibly red flags there because either it's a terrible place to work and they have to do that to keep people there, or they're going to be very, very demanding on you. They're going to expect like high level performance, and they figure, hey, we're paying you top dollar. So, you know, I mean, and then as if that isn't complicated enough. Okay. On top of that, you get a lot of companies, and like this is like the company I ran, you pay below market for maybe the low level stuff, but you pay above market for the mid and the high stuff. So, you get in there, you get your foot in the door, you basically prove yourself, and then if you get promoted, then you get paid very well for being in those roles. So, it's there's so many variables, it's hard to wrap your head around. And then on top of that, the last thing I'll say is that there's a certain amount of psychology here. Pretty much every single employee on the planet feels that they're underpaid. No matter how much they're making, no matter how challenging their job is, they feel they're underpaid across the board. So you've got that, on top of everything. So I'm
Well, and
done. That's
I
kind of
I come from Colorado in the United States, and uh, back in 2021, I believe our state passed a law requiring that any company recruiting in Colorado to hire Colorado people who live in Colorado are required to post compensation on their job postings. So I have been so used to seeing all these job postings with salary or hiring ranges listed. So it's always shocking to me when someone applies to something that doesn't have any compensation amount listed on there. My approach, similar to Bill's, is I would recommend that if they ask you what your salary expectations are, that you don't give them a number first, that you instead ask them what is the range that's budgeted for this position. Because, like Bill said, they've gone through all of the approvals to recruit for this position. They've likely gone through the approvals to have a budget for this position as well. And if they push back and they say, well, we need a number from you, then that's where you also have to be prepared with a range that you've done your research on, just as Bill said, where you have used multiple resources, like Glassdoor, salary.com, all of those different options where you can try to get a range of the fair market value for this type of position in your city and state and wherever you might be geographically. So, ideally, the salary conversation doesn't wait until the very end. Ideally, it also doesn't come up at the very beginning either. Hopefully, there's some transparency about what the range is, and just know that they're probably hoping to hire someone on the lower end of the range, and you are probably hoping to get hired on the higher end of the range. And you're going to have to find a middle ground that works for both you and the organization based off of your skills, based off of what you're bringing to the table, based on what they're willing to offer, even beyond pay. Compensation is so much more than just the salary you take home. It's also what type of benefits they might offer: health insurance, retirement, pay time off, sick leave, all of these other things. And so I might be willing to take a lower rate of pay for something that has a better compensation package, more days off, maybe a better policy with their retirement and all those different things. So there's a
they
lot of
give you a
factors.
lot of sick days or, things like that. Yeah.
Yep. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that go into it. In most cases, entry level jobs have very like minimal compensation packages. They're like hourly wages with very minimal health insurance and things like that. But as you start to work your way up in an organization, then your compensation packages tend to get bigger. Sometimes 30, 40, 50% of your total salary is your compensation package as well.
Yeah. And like there's so much going on here. Like the other thing is that, how when you go to the store to buy something, like, I don't know, buy groceries or whatever, it's like, you go to one store and you look at, like, okay, they sell this particular product and it's like $10. And then you go across the street to another store and they do carry that same product and it's $9 instead of 10, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to go shop at the place that sells it for $9. Right. So that's kind of also like, just like you behave like that, you're wanting to get something for as low a price as possible. Employers are also doing the same. That's how they regard, like, uh, their workforce. Like that's what, like human resources is, where the idea they treat employees just like any other resource, like inventory or energy or real estate or whatever. So they want to get a good deal on it. So the idea is they're going to try and, get the employee, they're going to try and hire a suitable employee for as cheap as they possibly can. They're going to push in that direction. And your job in, like, a job interview is to push in the opposite direction and say, like, no, I I'm worth a lot more than what you're thinking of. For example, it would be like going to the store and saying, okay, there's the economy brand, but right next to it on the shelf is the premium brand. Like, so if you're talking about, I don't know, coffee or something, here's the generic cheap crap, but here's the good stuff, right? It's double the price. Now, normally, what you would do to make a decision is you'd say, maybe there's like 30 brands of coffee on the shelf, right? And you have to make a decision. You got to buy one. What you might do in the beginning to sort of, help pare this down is you say, I'm not going to consider like the top five most expensive brands. If they range from $5 to $20, I'm going to cap it at 10. I'm not going to consider any brand that's more than 10. Why would you buy something that's $20 when you could buy it for 5, you know? So they'll artificially do that. And that's what we see in the hiring process when they ask you, you know, what are your salary expectations? If you say like right at the top of the range or something even more, they go, nope, I'm not, you're eliminated. I'm not even going to consider you. I'm
Yep.
going to, I've already got an overabundance of candidates to look at. I'm going to eliminate you simply on the basis that you asked for too much. Maybe it turns out that you're going to be the best employee we ever had, but I don't know. I don't care. I'm just eliminating you based on that. And I'm going to take a closer look at the cheaper options, you know? So your job is to not get eliminated, right? That's the first thing. And then you want to show your value so that you're saying like, look, I'm better than the cheapest brand on the shelf. What you're essentially getting is you're getting a premium brand in disguise for a good price when you pick me, you know. Uh, so that's kind of what's going on with these job interviews. So you have to push back against them trying to haggle you down. That's the idea.
Yep. And you also have to negotiate in the first place. But
Yes,
that's a whole other conversation. I'm sure, Bill, you probably have videos on the topic. I know I do. But salary negotiation is its own giant conversation.
it's its own universe. I taught a course in university in business school called Total Compensation. The entire course was just on compensation, and that's like worker compensation. That's not even getting into like executive compensation stuff like that, which is like a whole even more complicated thing. There's a lot to it, and then you factor in psychology, you factor in negotiations, and like it's just so huge, like all the facets to this.
Absolutely.
Okay, where were we here? We got
From Alper 22, I think.
here we
Yep.
go. Yeah, this one.
Yep. So I've been job hunting for 6 months and took a role I knew I was overqualified for, hoping to gain a new perspective in sales. After 2 months, it feels more like chores than growth. What do you suggest?
I've been in job hunting for 6 months. Took a role I was overqualified for, hoping to gain a new perspective in sales. So were you in sales before? You were in sales the whole time. You just took a
Yeah.
different job within sales. It
That
feels more
you
like
have
chores.
probably done before you were overqualified for it because you had more experience than what was required for that job. And it probably does feel more like chores than growth. Um,
Yeah, there could be a lot of different reasons for that. It could be just the culture of the company is different from what really works best for you, and or it could be like you're a tiny cog of a big machine, and it's not really satisfying. You don't have a lot of autonomy over what you do. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things that could be going on here.
yeah, and if you're the way that you're phrasing it feels like more like chores than growth. Sounds like you're not super happy with where you are right now. So you have a couple of options. You can stay where you are and nothing's going to change, or you can look to move out of the job. Now that could be to a different position internally, or it could be to a different position in a different organization. It sounds like that's kind of what you're looking for is something new, something different. If you can move internally and you can take on more responsibility, get increase in pay, all of those things, great. That's probably the better option is to stay internal. And at the same time, the chances of you, getting something completely different, more fulfilling, maybe even increased significant in compensation, then maybe choosing to look externally would be a good idea too. One of the good things about being in this position is that you are probably comfortable. So you can probably do this job in your sleep if it's feeling more like chores, like you don't have to put a lot of energy and brain power into your current position, which means that you can dedicate more of that energy and brain power to your job search to find something that is truly a better fit for you. So if that's what you choose to do, I think you'll be able to manage your time well with working and job searching.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of variables here. It depends on the degree of your dissatisfaction. Now, just speaking from experience, there's been a couple of times in my life where, you know, you you leave like working somewhere and then you go somewhere else, and it's different. And the way they do things is different. The way they communicate is different. The nature of your role is different. But I mean, like in major ways, like in their expectations Some places they really don't want you to be making any decisions or take any initiative. They will dictate to you exactly what they want you to do, and you have to obey. Other places, like in my case, I went to smaller companies, and it's like they don't have formal policies on everything. They haven't micromanaged all these positions, so they expect you to sort of figure it out and just get it done. They don't need you to check back and get approval for every little thing you're doing. Now, that can be quite at least for me, it was quite a gear shift at the time. It's like, what do you mean I'm just allowed to go and do this? You know, that's weird. It's taking a while for me to get my head around that. Um, you know what I'm saying? Now, I said all that to say this. When you get there, it might feel really weird. It feels like you're out of your comfort zone. You don't understand how these people operate, what they want you to do, and it's just confusing. But if you give it a little bit of time, it can be a real learning opportunity. And then you just have to sort of change your mindset a bit and tune yourself more to how these people think. So maybe it's a situation like that. It could just be a horrible place to work. It could be a toxic culture. I'm not sure, but it could also be this. So
Yeah.
if you just stick with it a little bit, maybe you got a bad first impression. You've been there a couple of months, but if you give it 2 or 3 more months, you might find that, hey, I'm starting to get the feel for this, and there's actually something to be said for doing it this way. My job's actually pretty sweet. So it could be that if you feel you could stick it out for a little bit longer to see if that's what's going on here, that might be something I would check out.
Yeah, well, and along those same lines, it's only been 2 months. That's not a lot of time in the big scheme of things. So maybe if you're starting to feel like you're getting a handle over like the typical roles and responsibilities that this role offers, then you might be able to seek out your direct supervisor and see if you can take on some additional responsibilities. Or if there's maybe a project that you've noticed has not been done, but it could help the efficiency of the team or something like that. There's always probably something that you could do to increase the intrinsic value of the position for yourself where you are now. That might not result in immediate compensation for that. You might not be paid more immediately. But if you start to demonstrate your value to the organization, then you'll be the first person who comes to mind for a promotion, for filling in for the supervisor, for like whatever it might look like. So sticking it out is not always the worst option. If you start to think of it as chores and it starts to become something that's toxic and you just are like dreading Monday every single week, then time to look for something different. If you feel like you can stick it out, try it.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, this depends on the details. And I'm assuming it's not like a super toxic place, but assuming it isn't, you're on the inside of this organization. So there's several things you have access to. You could get references, you could see if people will write you letters of recommendation. There are maybe networking opportunities. Somebody can refer you to a job or someone who's hiring at a different organization that they know. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things you can do on the inside while you're there. You could go and talk to some of the bosses if that's possible. Usually it is, not always, but usually it is. You just knock on someone's door and say, "Hey, you got a couple minutes," and then ask them questions about what they think of, like, how to this operation, or how should this be done, or what's the most important trait that a person in this role should have, or where's this stuff going in the future. Like, you could ask them stuff like that and see what they say. So while you're on the inside, see if you can set up some of those opportunities, get references, get referrals, get letters of recommendation, do some networking stuff while you're there. That might lead, and like Abby says, you might be able to find a new role within this organization. You're kind of the shoe in because you're an internal candidate. If they have a vacancy opening up anywhere, you could just jump from your role into that role, and maybe that works really well for you.
Yeah.
So
And
some factors there.
I had a boss who called this intrapreneurship rather than an entrepreneurship. So
Mm.
it's like having the mindset of being an entrepreneur, but internally for the organization. And one of the things that Bill is describing right now is this like networking internally, because even if something doesn't work out internally, you still have these people who would be willing to make connections for you, write letters of recommendations for you. So showing up, being a cog in the wheel, doing the job every single day just to do the job, and not doing any of this extra stuff is always an option. And at the same time, it's in your hands to convert this job to be more meaningful for you. If you put in a little bit of effort and think about who you might be able to connect with, who can, potentially set you up for a promotion in the future, or who could refer you to something else different down the line.
Yeah, and not to beat this to death or anything, but if you like, what that could also look like is if you work at a place where they have like a break room or a cafeteria, or people take their break at a certain time, they all sit in the lunchroom or something. It could start with you just going and sitting at a table with maybe a different department or different group of people than your immediate group that you work with, and just seeing, like, what's up with you guys, and like, how does it work, what do you guys do, and uh, you know this kind of thing. Can I come over sometime and see what you guys are doing in that department?
Yeah.
uh, and just get a feel for what else is going on there. And you know a lot of opportunities and stuff come out of these type of activities. So
Yes.
uh, maybe that's possible for you. I would just like to take this moment to just remind everybody that I am not a career coach. I don't work with people individually on a one-to-one basis to help you get better at interviews and things like that. But Abby is. Abby is a career coach, and if you've never hired a career coach, this is someone who works with you. Um, Abby is a recruiter, so Abby understands what it's like to be on the other side of the table for job interviews and things. And if you've ever been to a job interview where you were not successful, they did not pick you, but at the same time, they didn't give you any feedback and say what the thing was that they might have had a problem with. It's very hard for a lot of job seekers to improve if you're not getting any feedback. So the solution to that is to get someone in your court that can work with you and work on how to write applications that will result in interviews, how to do interviews that will result in an offer, things like this. So check out Abby's channel. She provides a lot of coaching services. Even if you just want to get like 1 hour worth of time and do a mock interview, Abby can do that with you, give you some real feedback on how you're coming across and maybe some recommendations. Check out her stuff. She's got a range of services for this kind of thing.
Yes, and Bill also has a lot of not services, but courses that he offers. What's great about them is that they're self-paced. So if you are in the process of doing a job search, or you're wanting to just better yourself, you can buy one of his courses and then take it when it's convenient for you. I don't offer courses, so you have to work with my schedule. I work with your schedule. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit more self-paced that you can do, in the evenings or something like that, then you can certainly look at Bill's channel. I've got his link to his channel in my description box if you're watching from mine, and you'll be able to see what resources he has available for you.
Yes, I have 3 courses. One's called Get Hired, which is probably the most appropriate for people here. It teaches you how to get a job in the posted job market and a job in the hidden job market. It's more tailored to introverts. So if you're an introvert, you're looking to unleash the power of networking to help you, check that out. I have one called the $100 MBA that teaches you business. And then I have one called Write Like a Professional. So if you want to be considered a candidate to be promoted up into a management type position, basically everything I learned about communication skills going from a supervisor when I started to a CEO when I ended my corporate career, I basically put it all into that course. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Um, we have a question here about
Mhm.
your services, I believe,
Yeah,
Abby.
so yeah, Nicholas says, do I offer assistance to improve resume and cover letters? Yes, I do. So what I don't do is I don't write resumes and cover letters for people, but I do receive them from people, and I can give you edits and comments and suggestions on what you can do to improve them, particularly when it comes to applying to online jobs. Applicant tracking systems are used by almost every organization these days. The applicant tracking systems can be very simple and not analyze your resume too in depth, or they can be the thing that makes or breaks your ability to get in and be considered for a job. So I do offer that resume and cover letter assistance. I call it my application materials review session. And it's really helpful because I go through in real time with you, covering your resume, your cover letter, even your LinkedIn profile, to identify areas for improvement, tailoring it to a specific job posting, or job industry or type that you might be applying to, rather than generic resumes, and looking at it from a perspective of a recruiter and hiring manager rather than the resume writer, which would be you. Many times we believe as candidates that the information we're including on our resume is what matters most, but it's not what the recruiters and the hiring managers care about. So I provide that different perspective and feedback on how you can make your resume, your cover letter more effective.
Yeah, it's hard to get into the mindset of the person on the other end. Like it's kind of a guessing game for a lot of candidates. You think you're presenting yourself in the best possible light. You're telling them the things that they care about, but often that's not the case. They have a different perspective. They're looking for something very specific, and so learning about how that stuff kind of works definitely helps.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. We have a question here. Photo Fuel says, how does someone with a bachelor degree have a better chance of getting a job than a person with multiple years of job experience? A lot of jobs wanted the bachelor degree. Thanks.
Good
That's a great
question.
question.
From a recruiter's perspective, my experience is that the job search industry is kind of shifting from exclusively requiring bachelor's degrees over experience to equivalency language. So many times what you'll notice in a job posting is an equivalency clause that says, we're looking for someone with a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. Now, that equivalency could be different for each organization and how they determine that. In my organizations that I worked with, 3 years of experience was equal to a bachelor's degree. And then, 5 years of experience was equal to a master's degree, something like that. It's usually not clear what that means, but if you believe that you have experience that sets you up to be successful in a role, still apply for it, even if you don't have a bachelor's degree in that area. I believe that most industries are moving away from pure education requirements. There are some industries like being a medical doctor, being a lawyer, things like that, where you are required to have a degree in order to get a specific job.
Yeah,
But
quote unquote real education. Yes,
yeah,
yes. As opposed to Mickey Mouse education. These are the official terms.
right. But I think a lot of people are recognizing that experience can be just as valuable as education and vice versa. So I think if you see something that has a degree requirement, if there's no equivalency language and you believe that you have equivalent experience that could set you up to be successful to do the role, apply anyway and see what happens.
Yeah, you can often tell in job descriptions like what they care about. If they're talking all about educational credentials, then they care about educational credentials. If they're not mentioning educational credentials, or instead they're talking about years of experience for everything, then that kind of tips you off that education for them isn't that big of a thing. You know what I mean? And you do get like this, it does vary widely. Some industries, they really don't have much respect for education. It's all based on years of experience. Think of like things like construction, you know, do you have your like ticket? Are you a journeyman, whatever? Okay, then that's all we care about education. I don't care if you got a PhD in this, it's like, how many years have you put in? The way people are promoted. Oh, you put in your time, you've got 15 years working in that role. So surely you must be able to manage people in that role. Like, other people or other organizations, they don't think like that. Oh, if you want to move into a management position, then you need an MBA. Think of like banks and stuff like that. Completely different culture. So there is no hard and fast rule that applies across everything. And like Abby said, some people have different formulas for trying to do an equivalency. You know what I mean? Like how many years experience do you need to be the equivalent of a medical doctor? The answer is there is none, right? But
Yeah.
other things like you would argue that, well, even 6 months experience is probably worth more than that particular credential you have, you know?
Right.
So it
Yeah.
varies.
Well, and I just worked this morning with a client who told me that the job posting says that a project management certificate or a Six Sigma certificate is required to apply for the job. And they didn't have that. They applied for the job. The HR rep that they had a first interview with was like, yeah, the hiring manager wanted me to put that as a requirement, but I don't think it's necessary. So what I want to do is get a good list of candidates available and put them in front of the hiring manager. And if the hiring manager truly believes that those certificates are make it or break it, then we might not move forward with some people. But I don't think those positions, or I don't think the position requires those certificates to be successful. And so in that case, even though the job posting said that it was required to have those certifications, the HR person was like, I don't think it's necessary. I think I put it in here to appease the hiring manager, but we can put some good people in front of them who don't have the certifications, who still have the relevant and qualified experience to do the job well. So keep that in mind as well.
And like, just to complicate things even more, like for that, because that's something I know about. For what it's worth, I have a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma. It's like there's no accreditation body for Lean or for Six Sigma that's like recognized like across North America or in the US even. So that means anybody can just sell you a course on like Six Sigma, and they can say, congratulations, you're a master black belt in this. And it's like, so as a result of that, what would the employers do? The employers say, well, I'm kind of skeptical of someone who's just got a certificate. I want to see how many years experience you have in that. That's what I put my faith in, you know.
Absolutely.
But other things, if the certification is widely recognized, then it'll carry much more weight. So if you say I have a degree from this university or something that's widely recognized, and it's accredited, then that might carry more weight. You know what I'm saying? So these are great questions. If ever you have to do an informational interview for someone in your industry, you're going to talk to some manager. 10 minutes ago on this live stream, I was saying, network within your organization, go talk to a manager, go talk to people. This is a great question to ask. Like, what do you think of this educational certification versus 5 years experience in the trenches? What,
Yep.
what do you place more value on? And everybody's going to have a different take, so these are great questions to ask.
Yep.
Okay, so we did that, and then we have, I think we've done all the previous ones, right? For photo fuel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Does Abby over? Okay, we did that one, right?
Mhm.
Hello, thank you for the live. I have one simple question. You only get one, and it better be simple.
Or
Uh,
else.
yeah, exactly. We're really going to bring the hammer down. So in the final job interview, they asked me for a salary value that I value myself in, and I answered with a certain amount. Okay. So this is your assessment of your worth for compensation. And now they're going to extend an offer that I'm worried that they offer me the X amount I mentioned where I want more in reality. Okay. I have an interview. No, that's a different person. So that's the end of that string. Okay. The great thing is in incarnation. The great thing is that you don't have to justify yourself to anyone. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe Abby is gonna give me an argument on this, but if you're negotiating an offer, you can just say like, look, this is how much I need. I don't have to convince you of that. I don't have to make a clever argument to get you to come around to my way of thinking. This is what I need, you know. And employers do that too. They say, listen, here we pay this much.
Yep.
Deal with it. This is what we offer, right? And you can argue till the cows come home about like whether that's reasonable or not. But at the end of the day, they say this is our offer. Take it or leave it. If you don't want it, let us know and we'll offer it to someone else who will take it. So if you want more and like the number you gave them actually doesn't work for you, it doesn't make sense for you to take the job, you won't be able to cover your cost of living or whatever. You don't have to come up with a big story behind it. You could just say, listen, unfortunately, I'm going to need X, you know, if you ever get to the offer stage, and do it that way. That would be my take.
Yeah, and I would actually agree with you, Bill. I think that when they ask about the number, like the salary that you value yourself at, that doesn't take into consideration the total compensation package. So we've just talked about this a little bit earlier. So
Yeah.
what I would do is if they're going to extend you an offer, also ask for the benefits summary so that you can see what the health insurance looks like, what the pay time off looks like, what the retirement contributions look like. So you can get an idea of what the total compensation package is. And maybe the amount that they offer you is actually in line with what you would expect with that salary or with that other compensation that comes along with the position. Now, if it is minimal and they give you what you had offered and they're like, well, you said this in the final interview, it's perfectly fine to say, well, after further consideration of the responsibilities for the role and the value that I'm bringing to this organization, I feel like, we'd be able to get something closer to this that might be, more equitable or something like that. So it's always fine to negotiate further. They might push back and say, sorry, we're not able to offer you more. And then it's up to you to decide, do I accept what I had originally said and what they're offering, or do I decline, or do they decline? So I think you should attempt to negotiate. There's no problem with that. The worst that's going to happen is you decide that this actually isn't the best for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and the way just if people are wondering, the way negotiation works is that if they send you an offer, there'll be multiple things in it. They'll be like, okay, here's your compensation, but then here's your hours of work, here's your title, here's like how much vacation you get and any benefits you might get, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be a lot of things in there. Here's your start date. Um, so negotiation would be like, okay, well, I'll give you this, I'll give you the vacation. It's actually a bit less than I'm used to, but you know what? For you guys, that's fine. I'll take that because I'm excited to work here. It's a really cool job. Um, here's the benefits. Oh, it's a little less than I'm used to. You don't carry this, but sure, whatever. Start date is fine. This is fine. That's fine. Okay, so listen, you change the number to this, and then I can start whenever you want. Like that kind of thing. It's a give or take kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I would encourage you to do that kind of thing. Uh, I mean, compensation can take a variety of different roles. What if they said we're going to pay you this money? That's all we can pay, but within 2 years, we're expecting you to move up into a more senior role,
Yeah.
and you can see we're not just bluffing here because if you look at the existing employees in the company, most of them have all been promoted within the last 2 years. So you can see that that holds water. Um, we're going to change your title to supply chain king. We're going to bring you donuts every morning, and we're going to compliment you on how thin you're looking every morning. But that's the amount of money we can pay you. Now,
Yeah.
does that sweeten the deal? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Maybe.
different
Yeah,
forms.
maybe they offer you fully remote work when that wasn't initially the option.
There you
Maybe
go.
they offer you a different type of schedule that works better for you. Maybe, I worked with a client who said that they had started discussing some of these compensation aspects. They said there's no way that they can change the amount of paid time off that's offered, but that doesn't mean that nothing else is negotiable.
Yeah.
So if you get what you want to do is you want to wait until there's an offer letter where it's in writing in some way for you to refer back to later, and then ask if there's room for negotiation and see what they have to say. You also want to be enthusiastic and thank them for the opportunity and demonstrate your excitement for the position and the offer and all of that. You can ask for a couple of days to, think about it and to consider what your best options are and things like that. But there's nothing wrong with negotiating, and in fact they're expecting it. That's one of the expectations of this process, is that there will be some negotiation that occurs.
That's I'm really glad you said that, Abby. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that negotiation, like as you said, you're expecting it. It's an expected thing. So I think there's a lot of job seekers out there that feel like, oh no, I don't want to rock the boat by like now having a problem with this thing that they've sent me. So I can't ask for the thing that I actually want. You know, it's okay. It's okay to do that. Now, there is a certain amount of risk. Okay, if you're desperate for a job and you need money now, the safest thing is just to sign it and return it, and there you go. But if unless you're in that position, there's a little bit of let's push for something extra. It's worth a tiny bit of risk. Then this is something they're expecting you to do anyway. So everyone
Yep.
should know that.
Yep.
I have an interview tomorrow, but getting nervous when I'm talking English. What can I do? You could wear a bowler hat, I guess. That would go with the whole English thing. No, you're gonna do fine. There's nothing you can really do in the moment. Get a good night's sleep. Be well rested. Uh, it's easier said than done, but do things that are going to make you feel relaxed. and not quite so on edge. Don't drink in like an energy drink right before your interview, and things like this. Um, you're going to be fine. Now, long term, if you're doing a lot of this interviewing in English, the more time you spend putting into speaking English, interacting with people in English, and like listening to English, the more it'll pay off. That's how languages work. They're like a musical instrument. The more you practice, the better you get. So, uh, I think that's about covers it for me. And
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to this, remember, just slow down, take a deep breath. If you feel like you're stumbling over your words, you're mixing words up, or you're getting tongue tied, take a drink of water. No one expects you to talk while you're taking a drink of water.
light up a cigar, the
Yeah,
usual.
yeah. It has like an inherent pause built into the fact that you're going to take a drink of water. Um, give yourself some grace. There's a pressure point technique that I have in some of my videos on increasing your confidence in an interview, reducing your anxiety. And it's just a point right here in your hand and on both hands, just depending on which one is most comfortable for you to use. And this is something that you can just keep your hands in your lap. No one has to know you're squeezing that little, pocket of muscle right here between your thumb and your pointer finger. Give it a little squeeze, and that is a pressure point that helps you focus and kind of recenter yourself if you're feeling lots of anxiety and concern and worry in your, immediate circumstances and situation. So slow down, take a deep breath, use the pressure point technique if you need to, and you've got this. You've got
Do
this.
you work with people on that kind of stuff, like overcoming nerves and this kind of thing? That's part of what you do when
Yep,
you're.
and a lot of it just comes down to practice, right? Like
Hmm.
I could give people, breathing techniques. There's box breathing, there's this pressure point technique, things that are kind of rooted in psychology and wellness and mindfulness to help us feel a little bit more centered and secure in what we're doing in the moment. But really, the true secret to success in an interview is practicing. Doing a mock interview with someone, thinking about your answers to very common questions, to different types of questions, identifying your core stories that you're going to share, and then actually practicing those more than just rehearsing them mentally in your head, but recording yourself, doing a mock interview with someone. And so those are all things that I can assist with.
Yeah, that's a big one. Doing mock interviews. I mean, it's not going to help someone who's got a job interview the next day. I mean, you're going to be fine. The next day you're doing fine. But like if you've got like weeks to work on something, uh, or just like a few days, like maybe 2 weeks or something. Mock interviews are like they're gold for this, because what you're doing is you do a lot of preparation solo, like just learning the answers to questions and things and trying to memorize them. But then the sort of second phase is to do a pretend interview with somebody else. So you're simulating what a real job interview would feel like. And if it feels awkward, you've got a friend or family member or a professional HR person, whatever, doing a pretend interview with you, a mock interview. If it feels a bit weird and you're a bit nervous, that's good, because that's simulating what a real interview is going to feel like. It's one thing to get the answer correct when you're home and you're calm and you can think clearly. It's another thing when you got like a panel interview, you got four people staring at you, you're outside of your comfort zone, you're on somebody else's turf, you feel on edge, you got these people looking you right in the face and you're trying to think up an answer. That's a lot tougher, right? So mock interviews help. You do like 30, 40 mock interviews, you're going to know this stuff backwards, forwards. They won't be able to stump you with any kind of question. That builds confidence in itself.
Yep. You learn your stories. You learn how to tweak your stories to certain types of questions. You learn how to connect your experience to the positions that you're interviewing for. And if you were to do a mock interview with me, for example, I record our sessions. I ask, between 8 to 10 questions based on a job description that you send me. And then we go into some feedback afterwards. What went really well? What were some questions that I had some confusion about? How might you be able to word some questions better or word some responses to questions better? I record that and then I send it to you, and you can then use it for as long as you need to prepare for upcoming interviews and things like that. So you could work with a career coach like me to do a mock interview. You could do a mock interview with a friend or a family member by printing off, a list of AI generated interview questions based on the job description. You could practice just recording yourself by yourself, individually. There's lots of ways that you could go about it, but the key is practicing. You can't
Yeah.
just in your mind mentally rehearse how you're going to answer these questions, because it's so much different than the real world experience of verbally telling another person your answer to one of those questions that they're asking you.
Yes. We've got a very complimentary thing here. Somebody says, "Good afternoon. I always learn something new from these roundtable live streams and provides great insights." Well, thank you very much, Quing Long Diep, if I'm saying that right. I'm sure I'm not, but that doesn't stop me anyway. Thank you very much for that feedback. You're helping to make our day, hearing stuff like that. So that's great to hear. Thank you. This was really useful. Also from Incarnation. Um, and another one. Thanks for answers. You guys are awesome. There's 27 people here. Um, I think we're going for at least another 15 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
So if you have questions about job search, or something you're concerned with, you're worried about, you're wondering about, let us know wherever you're watching this from. Abby's channel, my channel, and we will do our best to help you out. That's what we're here to do.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I
definitely.
think something that people probably encounter a lot is just this like application black hole. So many people will apply online and they'll just click submit, or on LinkedIn, like the easy apply. And then they've said like, well, I've submitted 100 applications and I heard back from 3. 2 of them were rejections. One of them was a phone screen that nothing moved forward. So really what you want to do is you want to try to get around this system. You do want to make sure that your documents that you're submitting for applications are tailored to the position that you're applying to and are not just this generic
Yeah.
version. So that's step 1. But then step 2 is to try to identify a real human being who might be able to give you some additional context or contact for the position that you're applying to. So if you are someone who's using a platform like LinkedIn to apply to jobs, just doing the easy apply isn't going to help, get your name in front of a real human being. That's a way for lots of people to apply. It's using your LinkedIn profile. There's nothing to really differentiate you. But what does differentiate you is identifying a human and reaching out to them directly. So if you're using LinkedIn, search for the company that you want to apply to. Find someone who is a higher level decision maker. So we had a question earlier asking about the CEO. You could also find, a manager or a director, or someone who has some hiring authority within the organization, and send them a message. If you send 10 messages and 5 people respond, that's better than nothing, which is what's happening with just the easy apply option. Same thing goes for other organizations that you might be applying to through their website. If you can identify who might be in charge of making decisions for that particular department or team, search them up on Google. Try to find what their actual email address might be and send them a message directly. That's going to have much more impact than just clicking submit and crossing your fingers and hoping that the black hole of applications comes through for you this one time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, what a lot of people don't really know is that, okay, if you look at an organization, you've got people at the bottom, you've got people in the middle, you've got people at the top. The people at the bottom can't really help you. They are not decision makers. They don't have the power to hire anyone or help you. The people in the middle, they might be able to help you, but they're usually too busy to help you, and it's not usually in their official job description that they will take unsolicited queries from outside the company, um, especially if you work in operations. Excuse me. But what most people don't realize is that the people at the top, they actually have more time than the people in the middle. Unintuitively, they do. They have a lot less structured time. They have a lot of time to deal with extra stuff like unstructured time, and it is part of their job to take unsolicited queries from outside the organization, because someone wants to get in touch with the company. It could be a partner wanting to do some joint venture with you. It could be a supplier that's wanting to make a deal with you, and it would be to your advantage to speak to them. Like it could be the press wanting to do
Yeah.
an article on you or something. I mean, like executives that don't take those kinds of queries, they're not going to be in business very long. Like it's a very bad thing to not do that. So if you can go in through that channel and you send them a very professional message, I'd very much like to speak with you, this kind of thing, or I'm looking for this, I do this, I'm great at this, I solve this problem, I know your company does amazing work in this area, I'd very much like to work for you, this kind of thing. They can forward that on. Right now, you're going to the person in the middle probably for a lot of like worker jobs or professional jobs, but it's like I was saying at the beginning of this live stream, it's easier to start at the top and go down. Now they've got like a note from their boss or their boss's boss saying, I got this, maybe check this out, see if this person, what they want. um, they're going to handle that much more seriously when it's coming down from on high rather than this just landed in their lap directly. Their response will often be like, what, who are you, why are you contacting me, I don't get this, no, goodbye, kind of, because they won't know what to do with it. So there's that too. I mean, there's a lot to this, um, but that's the thing. Someone was talking about CEOs before. That was the basic principle behind the stuff.
Yeah, and there's two additional questions that came in on this topic that we've moved back to. The first from Alper22 says, what would the best message be like in these kinds of cases to send? And in reality, it's, you probably don't have any connection to this person. You are proposing that you could fill a role or a vacancy that they're looking to fill. And so really it doesn't have to be too elaborate. You could attach your resume if you have the ability to do so, but saying something like, I see that you or your organization is hiring for this specific role. I have this specific experience, and then describe what experience it is that matches the job that you want to apply to. I would love to chat about how I can help your team. Would you be open for a quick conversation? Nothing too elaborate. If it's a multi-paragraph email, the chances of them reading that is slim to none. You also don't want to do a single sentence. So it just should be enough to let them know why you're contacting them, what value you could provide, to just pique their interest so that they open your document and then hopefully respond back to you. And that kind of goes along with the next. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
No, we keep going.
I was going to say that goes along with the next question that came through, which says, I found that some CEOs or formal ones tend to brush off requests like what we've suggested. So how do you suggest is an easy way to break the ice with them? Well, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that you will get zero response from some people. So it's somewhat of a numbers game. If I'm going to send 10 emails out, I can probably expect responses from half or less than half, which is just one thing that's going to happen. So you want to make sure that your response isn't too templated. We've talked about this in previous live streams before, is that if it feels too generic and feels too templated, then it's going to be much easier for them to delete. If you have some sort of personal touch in there, like, I found your profile on LinkedIn and this really stood out to me. I also noticed you're hiring for this. Here's how my experience lines up for it. I've attached my resume. That's one way to kind of pique their interest, is giving more of a personal touch to it. But there's no magic formula for reaching out to these people. It's going to be kind of trial and error. You'll notice what works best for the industry that you're trying to break into, the types of people that you're going to be working with or reaching out to. You also kind of have to think about what their inbox might look like. If I want to apply to a job with Google and I find the CEO of Google's email, the chances of them responding to my email directly is very, very slim, just because of how large that organization is. But if I find an organization that has 1,000 or fewer employees, then that CEO might have more bandwidth to respond to my email. Do you have any other suggestions for Matt, Bill?
Yeah, once again, like, huge topic. There's so many things you could say. Now, the simplest thing that I recommend if people are doing this kind of networking, where you would contact the CEO, first of all, it would be over LinkedIn, and you would send them a message. There's as I said, there's like, first of all, the thing that we have to get out of the way first is that if the company has posted a job, okay, they've got like a job posted on their website, they're officially looking for, people. Chances are it doesn't really make sense to do any of this, because what they're going to do is they're just going to refer you to their website. Go apply for the job. Go, there you go. Like, why are you talking to me? We have an official process for that. Go and follow the official process. The fact that you're trying to get around the official process is actually, it might even be a con, like a negative. You're not following instructions. Instead, you're kind of pestering me. Um, where you would do this is if the company is not posting a job, which is the vast majority of people that are hiring. They're not actually posting the job publicly. Um, and in that case, the simplest form of doing this is direct outreach. And that's where it's very similar to applying for posted jobs, in the sense that you apply to many jobs, and like Abby just said, I sent out like hundreds of applications. I got these 3 bites. This one didn't go anywhere, this one didn't go anywhere, and then this one led to something, but then it ended there. It still didn't go anywhere. So it's those ratios. Like, so if you send out like 500 applications and you get three responses, or 3 positive responses, like, what's that ratio for you? It's going to be like 1%, 0.5%, somewhere in there for a lot of people, I think, if you're just applying to posted jobs online. Now, this type of networking is very similar. You're not going to connect to 3 or 4 people. You're going to send messages out to many people, even hundreds of CEOs. Like, in your city, if you live in a city, there are many companies. There are thousands of companies, and most of them are small. And those small companies of maybe 10, 20, 50 people, they have either an owner that's running the business, they're running their own business, or they have someone running it for them, which is the CEO. So, that's the person you want to send a message to. And the simplest possible template is to say, hello, uh, my name is X, and I'm a fully qualified whatever. This is who I am. I do this. This is the problem I solve, and I know your company does that kind of work. If you're ever looking for someone like that to join your team, please let me know. Thanks, and have a great day. So you're not like necessarily trying to get a response from them. You're saying, if you're looking now for what I can give you, let me know. I would love to work for you. And depending on the situation, this can help, because you're not just sort of applying for a job. You're signaling that you are passionate about working for them, because you're taking the trouble to do this in the first place.
Yep.
The other element of it is that you're giving a sample of your communication skills. Here's a free sample of like what it's like to communicate with me. And if it's very persuasive, and they enjoy the interaction, it's not some like horrible thing that they suspect you're some kind of scam or something, uh, that also counts in your favor. And they're always looking, companies in general, always looking for people that have like a skill that they can contribute, but also are enthusiastic about working there. So that's why this can be very effective. Most
Yep.
companies are not hiring, but if you're sending this out to hundreds of CEOs, you're going to get many bites that will say, we should talk, or I forwarded you to the person in that department. They'll be in touch.
Yep.
So that's kind of how some of this stuff works.
Yep.
Um, there you go. That was long.
Yeah, and
uh,
it feels, we talk about this a lot, but it's because it's so critical and so many people don't take advantage of networking. It's one of those things that um, if you just try once, it's probably not going to work out. And then it's going to, it's easy to say, well, it's not going to work. It didn't work the one time I tried it. You have to be consistent and persistent with your networking. You also have to be very intentional at where you're looking and who you're communicating with. Because like Bill said, if I'm going to just be sending my networking emails to the people who are at the lowest level of the organization, they have no decision-making authority or hiring authority. That's just not their role in the organization. So they're not going to be able to make, things work for me. So if I reach out to someone at the top of the organization or toward the top of the organization who does have decision-making authority or hiring authority, then things can happen a little bit more quickly, or they can pull some, strings that cause the domino effect to happen where I can get hired faster. But it can take weeks and months and even years of building some of these relationships for them to ultimately precipitate outcomes that you're looking for. And at the same time, if you contact the right person at the right time, it might just be that single email that causes this major change in your career.
Absolutely. And as people tend to go further along in their careers, they tend, as a general rule, they tend to turn on more to networking as a way to get opportunities. That's just kind of a natural kind of tendency.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're coming up to our endpoint here, right? So we're gonna wind it down. As a reminder, check out Abby's channel if you're watching this on my channel. As I said a couple of times, she provides career coaching services. So if you're looking for someone to work with you, give you feedback on how you interview, and you know the perspective of the recruiter when you're interviewing with the recruiter, how you're coming across to them, and getting some tips and some pointers in that direction. Um, you provide a whole array of different services, working on resumes, working on interviewing skills, all kinds of stuff, overcoming nerves, like we talked about today. Check out Abby's channel. Check out some of the coaching services that she provides. Do you want to just describe, Abby, kind of better than I have, what it is precisely you provide, all the different things? Because I might have
Yeah.
left stuff out.
Sure. So, from a very tangible perspective, I offer like application material review sessions where I go over your resume, your cover letter, your answers to potential application questions that could come up. We could even look at your LinkedIn profile. I also, the one that is the most popular is my interview strategy sessions. And that's where we sit down and we just kind of have a conversation about what has worked well in your past interviews, what hasn't been so great. We discuss and strategize how to answer more common questions that could come up. We talk about how you could use AI to prepare for upcoming interviews, things like that. I also offer mock interviews, which we've discussed several times in the stream today,
Yep.
which are really helpful when it comes to getting, direct feedback about your interviewing style and your answers to interview questions. And you get a copy of that recording that you can then access and review for the rest of your life if you'd like. And then I also offer just like general career coaching. So if you are unhappy in your job, you're not really quite sure what you want to do next or where you want to go, that's something that general career coaching can cover. And then, I offer primarily individual sessions, but I do have a 4-session package that I offer too at a slightly discounted rate. And that's all live virtually via Zoom. And so if you're interested in working with me, I've got all my contact information in my description box. So if you're watching from Bill's channel, he's linked to my channel in his description box. And on the flip side, Bill offers some really great self-paced courses, primarily, directed towards introverts. It can be really hard when it comes to networking if you feel like you're more introverted, not as like socially inclined. So that's a great course that he offers. And then also you have one about like the MBA, right? Like
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me
I've got
more.
so I've got 3 courses, and the one that maybe people here might be more interested in is a course I have called Get Hired. It's my most popular course. Um, and so I walk you through how to get hired in the postage job market, in the hinge job market. As Abby said, it's more geared to introverts because you're using a lot of social networking stuff online as opposed to going to events and things like that. That's where the focus is. Um, I also have another course called Write Like a Professional, where if you want to learn high level communication skills, basically I've put all the stuff I know about that into one course, and you can take that. These are all linked in below if you're watching this on my channel. And then I've got one if you want to learn business. I also talk about entrepreneurship and sort of general business topics. And if you're into that, I have a course called the $100 MBA, Best Bang for the Buck Around. Not $100,000, $100. Basically, you get a reading list. You can get all the textbooks that they use in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program, and you're learning the same content they're learning. And I guide you through it with videos, and you can do this entirely on your own schedule. You can do it entirely to the depth of which you're interested. So it's very flexible. It's great for people that want to work for themselves. They just want to learn the knowledge. They don't want to take 2 years out and go back to school and pay 5 figures for this. So anyway, that stuff, it's linked below if you're watching on my channel. Check those out if that's the kind of solution you're looking for.
And if you're watching from
And
my channel, I've got Bill's channel linked in my description box so you can quickly access it and then check out what he has to offer.
yeah, and we do this live stream every 2 weeks, so every second Monday. So we are slated to do this again on, I think it's the 17th
Yep,
of
November
this month.
17th.
Yeah, so show up 2 weeks from today if you want to ask us both questions and all this kind of stuff. But check out Abby's channel. She talks about a lot of stuff that I kind of cover too on mine, job search and hiring and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, and I don't know if you have any parting words, Abby. I guess we're winding this down.
Yeah. I think Bill and I offer very similar perspectives on some things and very different perspectives on others, which is what's so great about this collaboration that Bill has put together for the two of us. So thank you, Bill, for hosting us every 2 weeks. And if you do have any questions about your job search, about your career, about interviewing, about any of those things, and you're unable to make it to our live streams, just know that Bill and I have them pre-posted so that you can actually comment on those posts and on the videos ahead of time. We will take your answers, or excuse me, your questions, and answer them in that upcoming live stream if you're not able to make it in person. And then, as always, they're recorded and they're available on our YouTube channels for you to rewatch if you are not able to watch the full thing. So please stick around. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And if you have any questions for us, let us know in the comments below.
Sounds good. Okay, take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.